Catherine Morgan smoothed the front of her formal diplomatic uniform and checked her reflection in the mirror. At 58, her face showed lines of experience, and her once brown hair had turned silver. Yet her blue eyes remained sharp and alert, missing nothing. "Ambassador Morgan will dock at Nexus 9 in 10 minutes, said Alan Wright through the comm system. The young communications officer had been assigned to her team just 3 months ago. Eager and bright, but inexperienced in the complex dance of galactic politics. "Thank you, Alan. I'll be right there." Catherine gathered her diplomatic materials and left her quarters. The USS Harbinger was a small diplomatic vessel, not built for combat. Captain Lisa Donovan had commanded it for 5 years now, and Catherine trusted her completely. As Catherine entered the bridge, Lisa turned and smiled. "Ready for another thrilling round of negotiations with the Arcturians?" Lisa asked. Catherine's mouth twitched slightly. "The Arcturus hegemony always makes things interesting. They're proud but not stupid. We'll get this trade agreement signed." Humanity had only joined the galactic community 25 years ago, when alien ships appeared over Earth's major cities. The initial panic had given way to cautious diplomacy, and Earth now maintained relations with 17 alien civilizations. The Arcturus hegemony was one of the oldest and most powerful factions in the Galactic Empire, controlling over 30 star systems. Alan looked up from his console. "Ambassador, I've reviewed the Arcturian cultural briefs again. Should I address Ambassador Zex Thrall with his military rank or his diplomatic title?" "Diplomatic title only," Catherine said. "Mentioning his military service would suggest we see him as a threat rather than a partner." The Harbinger docked smoothly at Nexus 9, a massive space station serving as neutral ground for diplomatic meetings. Catherine led her team of 4 through the airlock. Alan walked just behind her right shoulder carrying a secure data tablet. 2 other junior diplomats followed. The station's main concourse bustled with aliens of various species. Tall, insectoid Xerians chittered as they passed. A group of Moldavian traders, their scaly skin gleaming under the lights, haggled with a station merchant. Catherine navigated through the crowd with practiced ease, her team following closely. They reached the designated meeting chamber, where 2 Arcturians already waited. Ambassador Zexa Thrall stood nearly 7 feet tall, his violet skin contrasting with the elaborate gold designs on his formal robes. Unlike most of his species, he had 5 facial ridges instead of 4, marking him as nobility. "Ambassador Morgan," he said, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into English. "You have arrived precisely on time. Punctuality is a virtue even humans can manage, it seems." Catherine smiled pleasantly, ignoring the slight. "Ambassador Zex Thrall, it's good to see you again. Shall we begin? Earth is eager to expand our mineral trade agreements." The second Arcturian, an aide named Krelvor, sneered visibly. "Such eagerness from such a young species. Perhaps you should be grateful we trade with you at all." Alan tensed behind Catherine, but she gave him a subtle hand signal to stay calm. "Gratitude is indeed appropriate when friends help each other prosper," Catherine replied smoothly. "Just as Earth is grateful for this opportunity, I'm sure the hegemony appreciates our deuterium supplies." Zex Thrall clicked his mandibles in what might have been amusement. "Let us sit and discuss terms." For 3 hours they negotiated. Catherine noticed the Arcturians were less flexible than in previous meetings. Several times, Zex Thrall received messages on his communication device and stepped away briefly. Each time he returned, his position hardened further. During a short recess, Catherine pulled Captain Donovan aside. "Something's not right," Catherine said quietly. "They're stalling." Lisa frowned. "You think this meeting is a distraction?" "Possibly. Have you noticed the increased Arcturian military presence around the station? 3 warships have docked since our arrival." "I'll have our sensors do a quiet sweep of the area," Lisa promised. When negotiations resumed, Catherine paid careful attention to Zex Thrall's body language. As an Arcturian, he had different tells than humans, but she'd studied their physiology extensively. The slight vibration of his secondary antennae suggested anxiety or excitement. "Ambassador," Catherine said suddenly, changing the subject. couldn't help noticing the increased hegemony fleet activity near the Procyon sector. Is there a military exercise taking place? Zek's thrall's antennae went completely still. Military matters are not relevant to our trade discussions, Ambassador Morgan. Of course not, Catherine smiled, merely making conversation. An hour later, Alan leaned forward and whispered in Catherine's ear, "Urgent message from Captain Donovan. She needs to speak with you immediately." Catherine excused herself and stepped into the corridor. Lisa's face on the comm unit was grim. "Catherine, we've detected a large Arcturian battle fleet massing at the edge of this system. At least 30 warships, and they're running silent. This isn't a routine patrol." Catherine felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach. "How long until our transmission reaches Earth Command?" "About 12 minutes. I've already sent the data." "Good. I'll wrap up here quickly and—" The station's lighting suddenly shifted to emergency red. A calm voice announced, "Security alert. All diplomatic personnel, please return to your vessels." Catherine hurried back into the meeting room to find the Arcturians already leaving. "Ambassador Zek's thrall, what's happening?" she called. The Arcturian turned, his posture now openly hostile. "The Arcturus hegemony has determined that your species requires guidance and protection. Your colonies and homeworld will be annexed into our territory effective immediately." "This is an act of war," Catherine said, her voice level despite her shock. "Earth has done nothing to provoke this." "Your existence is provocation enough," Krelvor hissed. "Humans spread too quickly, ask too many questions, push too many boundaries. The Council has decided you must be controlled before you become a true threat." Catherine stared directly at Zek's thrall. "The Galactic Council will not sanction this aggression. The Council will accept what we tell them," Zek's thrall replied coldly, "including the unfortunate news of your death in an accident during these tensions." Catherine and her team backed toward the door. "My death?" "A regrettable diplomatic incident," Zek's thrall said, raising a weapon. "Beginning now." Energy blasts ripped through the room. Catherine pushed Alan out the door before diving after him. The two junior diplomats weren't fast enough. They fell where they stood. "Run!" Catherine shouted to Alan. "Get to the ship." They sprinted through corridors now filled with panicking beings. An explosion rocked the station, throwing them against a wall. Catherine's communicator crackled. "Ambassador," it was Lisa's voice. "The Harbinger is under attack. We can't hold position much longer. Get the ship out of here, Captain," Catherine ordered. "That's a direct command. Save your crew." "But now, Lisa." Catherine and Alan reached a junction when 6 Arcturian soldiers appeared, weapons raised. "Surrender, humans," the lead soldier ordered. Catherine assessed their options in an instant. No weapons, no escape route. The Harbinger had to get away with the warning. "We surrender," she said calmly, raising her hands. As they were bound and marched away, Alan whispered fearfully, "What do we do now?" Catherine's face revealed nothing, but something cold and calculating flickered behind her eyes. A glimpse of someone else. Someone buried beneath the diplomat's polished exterior. "Now," she said quietly, "we wait for the right moment." From a viewport, she watched the Harbinger break away from the station, taking fire from Arcturian warships. The small diplomatic vessel made a desperate jump to hyperspace, laser blasts following in its wake. Catherine allowed herself to be led to a holding cell, her face a mask of diplomatic poise. The Arcturians had no idea what they had just done. They thought they had captured a helpless human diplomat. They were wrong. Before she was Ambassador Catherine Morgan, she had been something else entirely. Something the Arcturians had never encountered. Long ago, humans had given her another name. They called her the Baba Yaga, and the Arcturus hegemony was about to learn why. The prison transport ship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Hellgate, a barren moon used by the Arcturus hegemony for their most troublesome prisoners. Catherine sat quietly, her wrists bound with energy cuffs that glowed blue against her skin. Beside her, Alan trembled slightly, though he tried to hide his fear. "What do you think they'll do to us?" he whispered. Catherine's eyes scanned the guard positions, the door mechanisms, and the weapons the Arcturians carried. She counted 6 guards, all armed with neural stunners and blade weapons. "They'll try to get information," she said softly. "Follow my lead and say nothing about Earth's defenses." The ship landed with a heavy thud. Guards yanked them to their feet and marched them down the ramp into the harsh environment of Hellgate. The sky burned orange from the nearby gas giant that the moon orbited. The prison itself was a massive structure of black metal, rising like a wound against the rocky landscape. Warden Krell waited for them at the entrance. Unlike most Arcturians, his violet skin had darker blotches, and one eye had been replaced with a cybernetic implant that glowed red. "The human diplomats," he said, his translator making his voice sound like grinding metal. "I've been told to keep you alive, but comfortable is not part of my instructions." Catherine stared back at him calmly. "We are protected by the Galactic Diplomatic Code. Our detention here is illegal." Krell laughed, a clicking sound that needed no translation. "Your species is so young. You still believe in rules." He gestured to his guards. "Take them to processing, then separate cells in Block D." They were stripped of their diplomatic uniforms and given gray prison jumpsuits. Guards scanned them for hidden devices and took samples of their blood. Throughout the process, Catherine remained silent and watchful. Alan tried to copy her calm, but his hands shook. Their cells were small concrete boxes with force fields instead of doors. A hard, sleeping platform and a sanitation unit were the only furnishings. From her cell, Catherine could see Alan across the corridor. Between them, other cells held various alien prisoners. Many species she recognized and some she didn't. That night, as the prison's lighting dimmed to simulate night, Catherine lay on her back, eyes open, mind active. She began to remember things she had put away long ago. Before she was Ambassador Catherine Morgan, she had been Commander Kate Morgan of Earth Special Forces, Black Operations Division. Before diplomatic receptions and trade negotiations, she had specialized in infiltration, assassination, and extraction of high-value targets. 28 years ago, during the Mars Colonial War, she had earned the name Baba Yaga. Not from friends, but from enemies who feared her. The Russian special forces who had fought against her had given her the name of the witch from their folklore, the one who came in the night and took people away forever. At Earth Command Headquarters, Admiral Jack Whitfield stared at the tactical display with growing concern. The Harbinger had limped back to Earth space with Captain Donovan's report. Ambassador Morgan captured, and an Arcturian battle fleet preparing to invade human territory. "How much time do we have?" he asked. General Susan Harper, commander of Special Operations, studied the data. 3 days at most before their main force reaches our outer colonies. Jack rubbed his face. "And Catherine? Do we know where they're holding her?" "Intelligence suggests Hellgate Prison," Susan said quietly. She looked around to ensure no one else was listening. "Jack, we need to talk about who they've actually captured." The Admiral followed her to a secure room. Once the door sealed, Susan activated a privacy field. "Most of our current personnel don't know," she said. "But you and I remember who Catherine was before she became a diplomat." Jack nodded grimly. "Commander Kate Morgan, the Baba Yaga." "The Arcturians think they've captured a harmless older woman who talks for a living," Susan said. "They have no idea they've just caged the most lethal operative in human history." Back on Hellgate, 3 days passed. Catherine observed everything: guard rotations, security systems, the behavior patterns of other prisoners. She exercised, in her cell, simple movements that looked like stretches but were actually combat forms, keeping her muscles ready. On the 4th day, a group of prison guards approached Alan's cell. Catherine watched as they deactivated his force field. "The pretty boy comes with us," said the lead guard, a particularly large Arcturian. "Warden wants to ask him some questions about Earth's defense systems." Alan stood tall. "I'm a diplomatic aide. I don't have access to military information." The guard grabbed Alan's arm. "We'll see about that." Catherine stepped closer to her force field. "Guard," she called out. "A word." The Arcturian looked over, annoyed. "Stay quiet, old woman, or you'll be next." Catherine smiled slightly. I just thought you should know that boy knows nothing. I'm the one with the information you want. The guard hesitated, then laughed. Nice try. But the warden said the young one breaks easier. They took Alan away. Catherine returned to her stretching exercises, but now with greater intensity. 3 hours later, they brought Alan back. His face was bruised and he walked with a limp. When they pushed him into his cell and reactivated the force field, he collapsed on his sleeping platform. That night, when the corridor was dark and quiet except for the hum of force fields, Catherine whispered across to him, Alan, are you awake? He turned toward her voice. Yes, Ambassador. Did you tell them anything? No, he said, pride in his voice despite the pain. I didn't know anything to tell, but I wouldn't have anyway. Catherine nodded. Good. Tomorrow. Things will change. Be ready. What do you mean? Catherine didn't answer directly. Have you ever wondered why I was chosen as Earth's senior diplomat, despite having no diplomatic background before first contact? Alan frowned. I assumed you were trained quickly because of your other skills. In a way, Catherine said. Before, I was a diplomat. I solved problems for Earth. Permanently. She paused. The name Baba Yaga wasn't given to me by friends. In the dim light, Alan could just make out her expression. It was still Catherine, but somehow different. Harder, more focused, like a predator watching prey. Tomorrow, she continued, when they come for you again, I'll go instead, and then we're leaving. Leaving? But how? This is the most secure prison in Arcturian space. Catherine closed her eyes. No prison is completely secure. Every system has flaws. I've found 7 potential weaknesses already. Alan was silent for a moment. Who are you really? Someone they should not have captured, Catherine said simply. Now get some rest. Tomorrow we'll be busy. Across the prison, in his private quarters, Warden Krell received a transmission from Arcturus Prime. The human female, said the severe face of Grand Marshal Vexus Koran. What has she revealed about Earth's defenses? Nothing yet, Krell admitted. We've focused on the younger one first. Vexus Koran's face showed displeasure. Change your approach. My sources indicate this Catherine Morgan may have valuable information. Break her. As you command, Krell said with a bow. She's just an old diplomat. She will break easily. After the transmission ended, Krell ordered his guards to prepare an interrogation room for the morning. The human woman would talk, or she would suffer. He had no idea he had just sentenced himself and his prison to destruction. Morning on Hellgate brought the harsh orange light filtering through the small window in Catherine's cell. 4 guards approached, the force field humming as it deactivated. Prisoner Morgan, the lead guard said, Come with us. Warden Krell wants to speak with you. Catherine rose slowly, appearing stiff and uncomfortable. My knees aren't what they used to be, she said, wincing as she stood. Getting old is not fun. Across the corridor, Alan watched nervously. Catherine caught his eye and gave a small nod. The guards placed energy cuffs on her wrists. As they led her away, she shuffled and moved slowly. One guard shoved her from behind. Move faster, human. Catherine stumbled slightly but kept the same pace. Sorry, these old bones don't move, like they used to. They reached a small room with a metal chair bolted to the floor in the center. Warden Krell stood waiting, his cybernetic eye glowing red. Ambassador Morgan, he said. Please, sit. Catherine was pushed into the chair. Metal restraints automatically clamped around her ankles. Warden, she said calmly. This treatment violates 17 different sections of the Galactic Charter. Krell moved closer, towering over her. I'm not interested in diplomatic talk. I want information about Earth's defense systems, access codes, and military capabilities. Catherine looked up at him, her expression mild. I understand. But before we begin, I have a medical condition I should mention. Krell paused. What condition? A heart issue. If you apply certain types of pain, I might die before telling you anything useful. That would be unfortunate for both of us. The warden considered this. Our medical scanners detected no such condition. Catherine shrugged. Human biology is still new to your people. Your scanners miss things sometimes. One of the guards stepped forward. She's lying, Warden. Krell studied Catherine's face. Perhaps. But it doesn't matter. We have other methods. He pressed a button on his wrist device and a panel in the wall opened. A small hovering drone emerged equipped with several needle-like appendages. This will access your memories directly, Krell explained. It's quite painful, but you'll live, and we'll get what we need. Catherine watched the drone approach. Interesting device. Neural mapping technology, based on Zethian designs. Krell looked surprised. You recognize it? I make it my business to know things, Catherine said. She flexed her wrists slightly, testing the energy cuffs. For instance, I know the guard rotation changes in exactly 2 minutes. I know the main power conduit for this section runs behind that wall, and I know there's a blind spot in your security system right where we're sitting. Krell laughed. You're trying to unnerve me, it won't work. I'm just making conversation, Catherine said. As the drone hovered closer, she added, one last question. That eye implant of yours, does it have a direct neural connection to your brain? The warden blinked, confused by the question. Of course, why? In one fluid motion, Catherine's hands slipped free from the energy cuffs. Before anyone could react, she grabbed the drone and jammed one of its needles directly into Krell's cybernetic eye. The warden screamed as electricity arced through his implant. Catherine was already moving, her body no longer showing any signs of age or stiffness. She struck the nearest guard in the throat, took his weapon and fired at the other 3 in rapid succession. All 5 Arcturians were down in less than 4 seconds. Catherine quickly released the restraints on her ankles and accessed the warden's control pad. She tapped several commands into it, then took his security card and weapon. The alarms remained silent as she slipped out of the interrogation room and moved through the corridor. Her movements were precise and efficient, nothing like the shuffling, older woman from before. Back in the cell block, Alan paced nervously. Suddenly, all the force fields in the section deactivated at once. Confused prisoners looked around, unsure what to do. Catherine appeared at the entrance, now wearing a guard's uniform. Alan, she called. With me now. He rushed to her side. How did you? Later, she said, cutting him off. We have exactly 7 minutes before the security system reboots. A large alien from a nearby cell approached them. His skin was gray and covered in bony plates, and he stood nearly 8 feet tall. Human, he rumbled. You did this? Catherine nodded. Prisoner 227, right? Zorlax of the Trell Confederation? The alien looked surprised. You know me? Political prisoner. Former military commander. Imprisoned for opposing Arcturian expansion in your home system. Catherine handed him a weapon. Want revenge? Zorlax took the gun, his mouth forming what might have been a smile. Lead. I follow. Catherine, Alan, and Zorlax moved quickly through the prison. At each junction, Catherine seemed to know exactly which way to go. When they encountered guards, she took them down with ruthless efficiency, stunning when possible but lethal when necessary. How do you know the layout? Alan asked as they descended a service stairwell. Observed. Listened. Calculated. Catherine replied. The guards talk too much. The ventilation system carries sound. The meal delivery patterns reveal the facility's layout. They reached a lower level and found a communications room. Catherine quickly disabled the 2 technicians inside and locked the door. Watch the entrance, she told Zorlax, then turned to the communication array. What are you doing? Alan asked, still trying to process the transformation of the dignified diplomat he knew into this lethal operative. Catherine's fingers flew over the alien controls. Sending a message home. Very low frequency encoded with a protocol only Earth Command will recognize. At Earth Command headquarters, Prime Minister Helen Chen had just arrived for an emergency meeting. Admiral Whitfield and General Harper stood before a tactical display showing the approaching Arcturian fleet. Options? The Prime Minister asked. Admiral Whitfield looked grim. Our fleet is mobilizing, but we're outnumbered 3-1. We've evacuated the outer colonies, but if the Arcturians reach Earth, a young officer burst into the room. Sir, we've received a signal from Hellgate Prison. Everyone turned. General Harper stepped forward. What kind of signal? Old Black. Ops protocol, ma'am. Authentication code Baba Yaga. The room went silent. Prime Minister Chen looked confused. What does that mean? Admiral Whitfield allowed himself a small smile. It means Ambassador Morgan is still very much the person we remember, Prime Minister. Back on Hellgate, alarms finally blared throughout the facility. Catherine finished her transmission and turned to the prison security system. Time to create a diversion, she said, accessing the controls. With a few commands, she triggered fire suppression systems all across the prison's upper levels. More alarms sounded as doors opened and closed at random. Now for our exit, Catherine said. She pulled up a schematic of the prison's landing bay. There's a transport ship scheduled to leave in 20 minutes. We're going to be on it. Alan stared at her in amazement. Catherine, Ambassador, who are you really? Catherine checked the weapon she had taken, her movements practiced and precise. Right now, I'm the Baba Yaga, and the Arcturus hegemony just made the biggest mistake of their existence. In the corridor, they could hear the sounds of chaos spreading throughout the prison. Guards shouted orders while prisoners seized the opportunity for freedom. Ready? Catherine asked. Alan took a deep breath and nodded. Zorlax growled his affirmation. Catherine opened the door, weapon raised. Stay close. And remember, we're not just escaping. We're starting a war. The landing bay of Hellgate Prison was in chaos. Alarms blared as guards rushed to contain the spreading riot. Catherine led Alan and Zorlax through maintenance tunnels, avoiding the main corridors. The transport ship is in Bay 3, she whispered, checking a stolen security pad. A military supply vessel. Small crew, minimal security. Alan stayed close behind her. Won't they have locked down all ships by now? Normally, yes, Catherine said, but their systems are currently confused. Through a small vent, they watched. As guards ran past, responding to false alarms Catherine had triggered throughout the facility. Now, she said, opening the access panel. They emerged behind a stack of cargo containers. The military transport ship sat on the landing pad, its loading ramp down as crew members hurried to finish loading supplies. Catherine studied the ship. Arcturian Shadowhawk class, fast, armed, and has long-range communication capabilities. Zorlax rumbled. 4 guards at the ramp, 2 crew visible inside. We need uniforms, Catherine decided. She pointed to a side door. Supply closet. Should find what we need there. Minutes later, Catherine and Alan wore the uniforms of Arcturian maintenance workers, while Zorlax put on the armor of a guard. The fit was poor, but in the confusion, it might work. They approached the ship casually, carrying equipment cases. When a real guard moved to stop them, Zorlax stepped forward. Emergency maintenance crew, he growled. Warden's orders. The guard hesitated, then raised his weapon. Identification codes? Catherine moved with blinding speed. Before the guard could fire, she struck precise points on his neck and torso. He collapsed without a sound. The other guards turned, but Catherine was already among them, her movements a blur of lethal efficiency. Alan stared in shock as all 4 guards went down in seconds. Catherine hadn't even used her weapon. On the ship. Now, she ordered. They rushed up the ramp. Inside, Catherine quickly located the 2 crew members in the cockpit and neutralized them with stun blasts. Zorlax, secure the cargo bay, she commanded. Alan, help me with the flight systems. Alan followed her to the cockpit. I've never flown anything like this. You won't be flying, Catherine said, her fingers dancing over the alien controls. I will. You know how to pilot an Arcturian military vessel? Catherine didn't look up from the controls. I make it my business to understand potential threats, including their technology. The engines hummed to life. Catherine accessed the prison's traffic control system and input authorization, codes she had stolen from Warden Krell's system. "Bay doors opening," she announced. "Hang on." The ship lifted smoothly, turning toward the exit. On the comm system, a controller's voice demanded, "Transport vessel Drell 9, you are not cleared for departure." Catherine pressed several buttons, and the ship's identification transponder changed. "Control, this is Special Transport Kilnar 7 on direct orders from High Command. Check your updated clearance." There was a pause, then, "Confirmed, Kilnar 7. You are cleared to depart." The ship accelerated through the bay doors into the orange sky of Hellgate. Behind them, explosions lit up sections of the prison as the riot Catherine had triggered spread throughout the facility. Once they reached orbit, Catherine set a course away from the main Arcturian patrol routes. "We're not heading to Earth?" Alan asked. "Not yet," Catherine replied. "They'd expect that. We're going to hit them where it hurts first." Zorlax joined them in the cockpit. "The cargo is weapons, military grade, enough to arm a small force." Catherine nodded. "Perfect." She accessed the ship's secure communication array and began entering complex codes. Alan watched her work. "Who are you contacting?" "An old friend," Catherine said as the system connected. On the screen appeared the face of Lieutenant Paul Martinez, an Earth intelligence officer. "Authentication code?" he demanded. "Baba Yaga, Winter's Night, Black Forest." Martinez's eyes widened. "Commander Morgan, we thought you were—" "Reports of my capture were accurate. My imprisonment, however, was brief," Catherine said. "Status report? The Arcturian fleet will reach our outer colonies in 36 hours. We've evacuated civilians, but our military forces are spread thin." Catherine nodded. "I need you to patch me through to Admiral Whitfield. Secure channel, eyes only." While they waited for the connection, Catherine turned to the ship's tactical display and studied Arcturian fleet movements. "There," she said, pointing to a space station near the edge of Arcturian territory. "Tactical Command Post Zeta 4. It's coordinating the invasion fleet." Zorlax leaned forward. "I know this station. Lightly defended because it's deep in their territory. They think it's safe." The screen flickered and Admiral Whitfield appeared. "Catherine, good to see you're still the same troublemaker." "Jack," she smiled briefly, "I'm sending you data on the Arcturian invasion plan. I've identified their command structure and weak points." The Admiral reviewed the information. "This is exactly what we need. Where are you now?" "In a stolen Arcturian vessel with access to their military frequencies and identification codes," Catherine replied. "I'm taking the fight to them." "That's insane," Whitfield said. "You're in an enemy ship behind their lines." "Exactly where I need to be," Catherine countered. "While their fleet moves toward Earth, I'll hit their command posts. Create confusion, disrupt communications, slow them down." The Admiral frowned. "It's too risky." "It's what you trained me for, Jack," Catherine said quietly. "Before I was a diplomat, I was the Baba Yaga." After a long pause, Whitfield nodded. "Very well. What support do you need?" "Have Commander Rick Vasquez bring a special ops team to these coordinates," Catherine sent the data. "And tell Chief Engineer Olivia Grant to prepare the prototype cloaking device. We'll need it." After ending the transmission, Catherine set a course for Command Post Zeta 4. "What's the plan?" Alan asked. "We're going to infiltrate their command post, access their central network, and extract their complete invasion plan," Catherine explained. "Then we're going to destroy the facility." Zorlax made a rumbling sound of approval. "Good, but the station will have hundreds of troops." "They won't be looking for us," Catherine said, "and I've done more with less." As the ship accelerated toward Arcturian space, Catherine accessed the vessel's weapon systems and began a full diagnostic. She moved with practiced ease, checking power levels and targeting systems. On Grand Marshal Vex Karan's flagship, an aide approached with urgent news. "Grand Marshal, Hellgate Prison reports a security breach. The human diplomat has escaped." Vex Karan dismissed this with a wave. "One old human female is irrelevant. She cannot stop our fleet." "Sir, The aide persisted nervously. There's more. The prison warden was found severely injured. Before losing consciousness, he said something about Baba Yaga? The Grand Marshal frowned. What does that mean? Unknown, sir. It appears to be a human term. Find out, Vexacaran ordered, and increase security at all command installations. One escaped prisoner changes nothing, but I dislike loose ends. As the Arcturian fleet continued its advance toward human space, they remained unaware of the danger now moving through their territory. The human ambassador they had dismissed as harmless was about to show them why, long ago, her own kind had named her after their most feared mythical witch. The hunt had begun, and this time, the Baba Yaga was coming for them. 3 days later, the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with tension. Representatives from 17 major civilizations gathered for an emergency session. The massive circular room featured raised platforms arranged in tiers with each delegation seated according to their status in galactic politics. The Arcturus hegemony occupied one of the highest positions. Ambassador Zexathral stood proudly as he addressed the assembly. The human colonies represent a clear threat to galactic stability, he declared. Their rapid expansion and military buildup cannot be tolerated. The hegemony has merely taken preventive action to ensure peace. At the Earth delegation's platform, Councillor Benjamin Cole rose to speak. As Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, he faced an almost impossible task. The Arcturians were a founding member of the Council, while humans were newcomers, with few allies. The Arcturus hegemony launched an unprovoked attack on peaceful human settlements, Cole stated firmly. They violated diplomatic immunity by attacking our ambassador's vessel and taking her prisoner. These are not the actions of a civilization concerned with peace. Murmurs spread through the chamber. High Counselor Trazanar, a tall, blue-skinned elder from the neutral Volus Confederation, raised his hand for silence. These are serious accusations, Ambassador Zexthral. Your government reported that Ambassador Morgan died in an unfortunate accident during heightened tensions. Is this not correct? Before Zexthral could answer, the main doors of the chamber slid open. Every head turned as Catherine Morgan walked calmly into the council chamber. She wore a formal diplomatic uniform, perfectly pressed despite recent events. Alan Wright followed a step behind her. Gasps and exclamations filled the room. Zexthral's face darkened with rage. Impossible, he hissed. Catherine approached the central speaking platform. High Counselor, I request permission to address the Council. Treznar, visibly shocked, nodded. The Council recognizes Ambassador Catherine Morgan of Earth. Catherine's voice carried clearly throughout the chamber. Esteemed representatives, I stand before you not only as Earth's diplomat, but as living proof of the Arcturus hegemony's deception. I was not killed in an accident. I was captured, imprisoned illegally on Hellgate, and scheduled for execution after interrogation. She activated a small device, and holographic images appeared above the central platform. They showed Arcturian, warships firing on her diplomatic vessel, security footage from Hellgate prison, and most damning of all, detailed plans for the invasion of human space. These documents, taken directly from Command Post Zeta 4, outline the hegemony's plan to annex all human colonies and place Earth under military occupation. Catherine's voice remained calm and measured. This was not a response to any human provocation. This was a carefully planned act of aggression, prepared months in advance. The council chamber erupted in shocked discussions. Zexthral stepped forward, his mandibles clicking furiously. These are forgeries, and even if Ambassador Morgan somehow escaped legitimate detention, how could one human female possibly obtain classified military documents from a secure Arcturian facility? Catherine looked directly at him. The same way I escaped your prison, Ambassador. Your people made a critical error. You saw a human diplomat, an older woman who uses words instead of weapons, and assumed I was harmless. High Counselor Trasnar leaned forward. What exactly are you implying, Ambassador Morgan? Before Catherine could answer, a commotion broke out near the Arcturian delegation. 3 figures in stealth suits deactivated their cloaking devices, revealing Arcturian Special Forces operatives with weapons aimed at Catherine. The council chamber descended into chaos as security alarms blared, but Catherine didn't move or seek cover. Instead, she smiled slightly. In a blur of motion that few eyes could follow, Catherine disarmed the first assassin, used his weapon to stun the second, and physically threw the third against the wall. All three were neutralized before the council's security forces could even react. Standing calmly amid the unconscious assassins, Catherine straightened her uniform and continued speaking as if there had been no interruption. As I was saying, the hegemony made assumptions about me based on incomplete information. She turned to face the shocked faces of the council. Before I became Earth's diplomat, I served my planet in other ways. My people called me Baba Yaga, named after a figure from our mythology who inspired fear in those who did wrong. High Counselor Trasnar stared in astonishment. Who is this human who negotiates treaties with one breath and executes combat maneuvers with the next? Counselor Cole smiled slightly. We have a saying on Earth: speak softly and carry a big stick. Ambassador Morgan embodies this philosophy perfectly. Grand Marshal Vex Karan burst into the chamber with a security detail. This is outrageous. The human is clearly dangerous and must be detained. Indeed, I am dangerous, Catherine agreed calmly, but only to those who threaten peace, which brings me to my final evidence. She activated another hologram, showing the Grand Marshal himself giving orders for the invasion and specifically commanding that no human prisoners be taken from the outer colonies. The evidence was irrefutable. After hours of emergency deliberation, the Galactic Council voted to impose severe sanctions on the Arcturus hegemony and authorized a peacekeeping force to ensure the withdrawal of Arcturian ships from human space. As the session ended, Catherine found Alan waiting near the Earth delegation's platform. That was incredible, he said. The way you handled both the assassination attempt and the diplomatic negotiations. Catherine smiled. Each situation requires appropriate tools. Sometimes words, sometimes action. High Counselor Trasnar approached them. Ambassador Morgan, the Council wishes to extend a formal apology for what you endured. Your handling of this crisis has been educational for many of us. Thank you, High Counselor, Catherine replied. Earth hopes to continue building peaceful relationships throughout the galaxy. As they left the council chambers, Defense Minister Julie Winters met them with news from home. The Arcturian fleet is withdrawing from our borders, she reported, and Grand Marshal Vex Karan has been taken into custody by his own government. They're desperately trying to distance themselves from his actions. Catherine nodded. They'll appoint a new military leader and recall Ambassador Zex Thrall. Expect more conciliatory approaches in the coming weeks. Thanks to you, Julie said, with admiration. The stories about the Baba Yaga weren't exaggerated. Actually, they were, Catherine said quietly. I was never as merciless as the legends claimed, but the reputation proved useful. Later, aboard the Earth diplomatic vessel taking them home, Alan found Catherine in the observation lounge, looking out at the stars. What happens now? He asked. Do you go back to being just a diplomat, or? Catherine considered the question. I've always been both, Alan. The skills I used as the Baba Yaga make me a better diplomat. I understand threats, power, and leverage, and my diplomatic training makes me more effective in conflict. Will they come after you again? Alan asked. Perhaps, but next time they won't underestimate me. Catherine turned from the window. More importantly, the galaxy now knows that humans aren't just clever talkers. We can be dangerous when provoked. Alan nodded. Diplomacy is always the goal. But when diplomacy fails, Catherine finished, it helps to have spent 30 years as the boogeyman's boogeyman. As their ship accelerated toward Earth, news spread throughout the galaxy about the human diplomat who had single-handedly outmaneuvered the mighty Arcturus hegemony, the unassuming older woman who turned out to be the legendary Baba Yaga. It was a lesson the galactic community wouldn't soon forget. Humanity might be young among the stars, but they were not to be underestimated, ever, again.